So given that China's comprehensive national power is inherently relative, that is, it's okay if the other guy loses, and that in no case is China going to help another country increase its own comprehensive national power more than what China does. So it's always, no matter what kind of deal you have with China, their view is always that they have to win more than you,
or lose less than you.
Yeah, or lose less. So then, India understands this. They, especially in 2020, started to break away from China in a lot of ways after that border clash. So what happened with that?
Okay. Yeah. So again, one of the first places I saw this comprehensive national power stuff written about was, I saw it in a book by a Chinese New Zealand academic talking specifically about the Pacific Islands in 2010. But the Indians themselves, some people in the Indian military wrote about this in 2013. So they're very aware of this issue, and but there had been the Chinese Communist Party is very good at elite capture and influence operations, and it's not necessarily directly through them. There's often we think in bilateral terms, especially if you're in the U.S. You kind of think it's always the U.S. and somebody else, but there's often another player involved, and there are very few actual bilateral relationships anymore. So if you're dealing with, if the U.S. is dealing with the Solomon Islands, the Chinese are in the room somehow. And similarly, the Indians are very aware that, that the Chinese are just floating all around them. They've got this Iron Brotherhood partnership with Pakistan. But there was a bit of a paralysis in the strategic community due to some elite capture, and there were a lot of other influences involved that didn't necessarily want India to go straight up against China, so to speak. But like you said, the Galwan attack in 2020, which killed 20 Indian soldiers, broke the dam. So all of those members of the defense strategic community in India who had been worried about China since 1962 suddenly got to say, we have a plan for this. And all of these initiatives started to come forward. Within 2 weeks of the Galwan attack, they banned 59 Chinese apps, including TikTok and WeChat. Just banned them. That was it. No prolonged thing like you got in the US. It just was done. They also started to block FDI. They've just recently blocked, there was a Chinese attempt to set up a big EV battery plant in India. They blocked that investment. They went after Xiaomi phone manufacturer for money laundering. They seized like $700 million. They just really did all of the things that we should all be doing in many aspects of dealing directly with Chinese infiltration. They talk about China as a threat publicly in the media. There was just an article that came out in one of their defense magazines, CLAWS, the Center for, I think, Land Warfare Studies, which is basically the army think tank, talking about rethinking Tibet. And, that's now being publicly discussed, this issue of Tibet, and perhaps the liberation of this captured territory. So some talk about the ASEAN Sea instead of the South China Sea. So once the dam broke, you started to see this really comprehensive national defense approach to dealing with China. And that's bilateral, but it also started to bring in others. And this is this thing about it's not just bilateral anymore. There's always these other elements. And what China hates is when countries come together. And India started to to really do some interesting things, like I2U2, which is the India, Israel, United States, UAE partnership, which is bringing together a whole new constellation that does not include China, doesn't include Russia, and gives a way of interacting on things like tech, which is kind of very interesting. At the G20, which India led, you had this the proposal for this India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, right? So not only is India going after protecting itself from China head on, but it's also broadening itself out. It's just the Prime Minister of Vietnam was just in India for the first that level visit in 10 years. They signed a defense agreement. India has sold BrahMos missiles to the Philippines. It's working with Taiwan, not publicly discussed very much, but it is very active. It's trying to give Sri Lanka the economic wherewithal to extract itself from Chinese influence. So since the Galwan incident, or Galwan attack, you can see from India all of the different ways that we actually can fight back against China. There's no country, I'd argue, no country on the planet that has been fighting China in this comprehensive national defense way, and including multinational defense way, as much as India has been.